official welcome to today's Tuesdays at 2. Thank you for joining us. I am Antoinette LaGrossa, and if you're new to Schiller Learning or the Rising Stars Foundation, we are a nonprofit that produces Montessori-based math and language arts, plus all kinds of other resources, complete math and language arts curriculum. Math, we cover pre-K through pre-algebra. Language arts, we cover pre-K through fourth. So it's those foundational pieces of that core curriculum. We do also have some additional resources for other subjects. New product that just is launching today is the World Flag Nomenclature cards. If you're new to Montessori 3-part cards, that's going to be another material that you absolutely love. Speaking of materials that I love, the ones that we're going to talk about today, which go to improving handwriting, are spectacular. And these really speak to how Montessori is such a fabulous fit for homeschooling. And oftentimes we think of, teaching writing as copying tedious worksheets with the little dotted lines and trying to get Johnny to, hit that midline correctly and not go above the top and bottom guides. And it can be frustrating, it can be tedious, pretty uninteresting for a very young child. Also not developmentally appropriate. Little bodies are designed to move and explore and really do that interest-led learning, which is where these materials come in. So there is a different way to prep your child for learning to write and introducing the alphabet. So the star of the show are the Montessori Metal Insets, which you see on the screen there. That is a portion of those materials. And I am just going to actually stop that share for just a moment so that we can go ahead and look at the materials. As I mentioned, the ones on your screen were a partial set. And there's a total of 10 of these frames, and the frames have the corresponding inset to them. These are beautiful, they're metal, they're weighted. The child is going to enjoy even just touching the materials. You can get these in a plastic version. Schiller Learning just recently had these manufactured specially for us. It is a beautiful new set. There is a knob here. So when you're introducing the Montessori Metal Insets or any Montessori material, you're going to be doing that with the 3-period lesson. Is anyone here familiar with the 3-period lesson? Or maybe I should ask, who here is not familiar with using that Montessori 3-period lesson? Because then I'll know how much to dive into that. The 3-period lesson is a very simple but effective gap preventer. Okay, excellent. And what that does is it ensures that the child is understanding the materials with which they are working. So we'll get into introducing those in just a moment. I do want to show you a little wooden tray I have here, and in the interest of showing, so you'll see that there's a wooden tray that the child can just pick up and carry to their spot. There are some sheets of paper. Now, a little tip is you can start with simply some 8.5 by 11 regular paper and use your metal inset to easily create some papers that are sized exactly to match the frame. So that's a little tip for when you're using the insets. And you can just press that down on the table and tear that. And I do it a few sheets at a time. Once I get that in half, then again, I use that inset to tear off a little more and end up with some papers that are going to be sized to that. Uh, Matching the frame to the paper, it's simply another part to that fine motor control and the manual dexterity. So the Montessori insets, there are some guided tracing activities that they'll do with these, and which we'll go in depth on, as well as just a huge, endless, open-ended variety of artistic extensions that the kids can do. So generally, these are going to be used at ages 3 to 6 for preparing for writing and helping to fine tune that fine motor control, the feel of the pencil in the hand, the pencil grip, and being able to do appropriate shading, getting used to the pressure that they want to use. Um, but these are great as a remediation for older students who've developed poor handwriting habits, and children who did use them when they were younger will continue to enjoy them even as they get older. And in talking to people who attended Montessori as a child, the insets are one of those materials that is just across the board absolutely a favorite. Okay, so you can use crayons with them, but colored pencils are nice and they have an advantage, which Schiller Learning is actually working on sourcing colored pencils right now that are a bit better quality than the standard that you can get in most school supply sections. My daughter, she has an absolutely gorgeous 160 piece set of colored pencils. It is the most gorgeous set I've ever seen. And I do borrow hers, but I cannot wait until the Schiller Learning set comes out. But the pencils have an advantage because the pencil is what ultimately the child is most often going to be writing with. So in doing the activities with those, it helps them to learn to hold it and how to use it. With the guided tracing, it's not going to feel like they are sitting down and filling out those tedious worksheets with the lines. It's going to be visually appealing. It is going to um, stimulate the touch nerves. It's also when they are picking up the inset. So this, by the way, is referred to as the frame. And for every frame, there is an inset which has a knob. When the child is picking up the inset by the knob, use that tri-finger grip, and that is helping to develop the muscles in the hand for a proper pencil grip, also helping to prep them for that position. Okay, so you've got your wooden tray, your colored pencils, some paper in there. If you have a lot of open shelving, you could set all 10 of the insets and their frames just laid flat and together with the tray, the paper, and the pencils next to it so that the child can select whichever inset they'd like to work with, pop that in the tray, and easily carry it to their workspace. In Montessori, open shelving is used to aid the child in knowing which materials work together uh, taking it independently to their workspace, and then being able to very easily put things back exactly where they belong. Because first off, they're just taking things off of their work mat or their tabletop and putting them back in the tray. And then they take that tray back to the empty spot on the shelf. It's really simple, but helps the child to be independent so that after you introduce the work, show them what to do with it. Whenever they are drawn to that material, they can just go do it and then return that very easily. Okay. So let's go back to that 3-period lesson that we are going to use to introduce the frame. Generally, we introduce 3 things at a time, and you could put 3 or more, depending on the age of your child, their familiarity uh, with the with the shapes, because it's also going to be building their vocabulary. For example, this is the curvilinear triangle. So you would place this always working from the top left, working top to bottom, left to right, and introduce it by pointing to it. And the first time you're using it, let them know that the set is called the Metal Insets. We're going to have fun with this, drawing different designs, and that they can use whichever colored pencil that they'd like, and then go ahead. This is the curvilinear triangle. Introduce the next one, and then, so that's the first period where you're introducing, you're naming it. Then the second period is where you're going to mix the order of the shapes, or simply ask them, point to a random selection, and will not point to, ask the child to. Can you show me the triangle? Can you show me the circle? Can you show me the curvilinear triangle? And then they'll simply point to identify that. And then once they're able to do that identification with the pointing, then you're asking, can you show me, or picking it up, excuse me, what is this? And now they're going to be able to name that. Now, this material is used in Schiller Learning Language Arts Kit A. So all of the activities are totally scripted with that, and it takes you step by step through that. And then the first activity that they are going to do with those is to then take the inset and trace. Oh, let's see, that one is not showing up on camera very well. Okay, and there we go. Okay, and trace around that, always again starting top left, working in a clockwise motion, because by working top to bottom, left to right, you're training proper eye tracking movement for when they're developing reading skills. And in working with that clockwise movement with the pencil, again, it is also working on the way that most letters are properly formed. In doing the guided tracing with the insets, they're actually practicing every single stroke for all 26 letters of the alphabet. And then they will do straight lines. They will do diagonal lines one direction. They will do diagonal lines the opposite direction. And with the curved and straight edges of the shapes themselves, and then with the guided tracing, you are getting all of those different letter strokes. They will also then go into doing multiple tracings and just pivoting it just a little bit. If you remember spirograph, it's pretty similar to that. And kids absolutely love to do that precision tracing. They will get lost in this activity for extended periods of time. And then it takes you into uh, overlapping two shapes, putting shapes together into making different pictures. So you can take those insets and combine those on an 8.5, 11 sheet in different ways to do like a tanagram activity, but doing that with tracing, and the child is determining that new picture, the new creation that they are going to make out of that selection. And then they can do just simple open-ended artistic things. And you can see here, this Slinky Dog is inspired by one that a child did at a homeschool convention. When we're exhibiting, we put the this material out for kids to be able to do make and take projects that they can take with them. Sometimes they forget to take their picture with them, and I can tell you, we just have this collection of amazing creations that kids who weren't even familiar with the material were able to walk up and spur of the moment create. Uh, Now, to also help with a proper pencil grip, the insets, by the way, today just launched our President's Day sale, and the insets are $20 off. It is the lowest price of the year, and it is the best deal you will find on metal insets out there anywhere. So if you don't have them and you'd like to add those to your language arts, they make an excellent addition no matter what program that you are using. Okay, so let's continue. If you have any questions about the inserts, do go ahead and just pop those into the chat, and you can send them to the group or privately as well. Okay, so pencil grip. There's another thing that you can do that kids will be drawn to, and it's going to help them learn both proper letter formation as well as positioning for proper pencil grip. And that is going to be a tracing tray. Now, in a Montessori classroom, you will see trays of sand, which is wonderful. Kids enjoy them. But sand is allergenic for some people. It's also rather unpleasant if your 3 or 4 or even 7-year-old happens to spill a tray of sand in your house. When Schiller Learning released the language arts curriculum back in 2016, they did something absolutely genius. And that is swapping out the sand for quinoa. Now, for the tracing tray, we simply use the lid to our movable alphabet. The movable alphabet is color-coded, red for consonants, blue for vowels. This is also included in that Language Arts Kit A that the insets are. This is wonderful for introducing the letter, and the child can feel around that shape so that not only can they see it, but they can feel it as we are introducing that letter sound. We do introduce the sound prior to the name. That is just a little tweak in reading instruction that you'll find in Montessori that makes a huge difference for some kids, because sometimes you'll see emergent readers struggling because they are, as they're decoding, throwing in letter names along with those letter sounds. That's because that was the first impression of that abstract symbol to their brain. And then they have to be retrained to that sound. So simply introduce the sound first and it eliminates that trouble. So that is why you see that in Schiller Learning. Okay, so then with that lid, you will take quinoa. Now, this being a light color wood, We use a red, you can use red or even the black quinoa. Quinoa comes in a variety of colors. Sometimes people are surprised that that red quinoa is indeed quinoa because it's an unusual variety. We don't use the natural simply because a darker color gives a nice color contrast. If you don't have a beautiful wooden tray, you probably have a metal cookie sheet with that little lip on the edge, like a jelly roll pan. So you could simply use that with some of that tan quinoa. The key is that you just want enough to cover the bottom. Otherwise, it can fall in on itself while the kids are tracing. And then to erase, they just give it a simple back and forth shake on the table. Doesn't have to be picked up at all. Pro tip for the quinoa activity is to do that on your work mat because that way it is easier for the kids to see any of the little grains that have gotten away from them so that they can go ahead and pick those up to return into the bag or the container of quinoa. Uh, and then what I do actually is for any, if there's a large volume that is spilt, I will just pick up the mat and use it to pour it right back into the tray and then put it away. So the mat can help keep that nice and neat and easy for the child to see when they do spill. When they spill, encourage the child to put those greens back in right away. This also makes a nice little kind of like a bulldozer that you can scoop that right into your hand. That's another way of doing that. But the tracing tray, so then once you've introduced the letter with the movable alphabet, you can have the child make that shape, tracing it into the quinoa. We do recommend a two-finger trace. That two-finger trace is going to prepare the child for that proper pencil grip. Uh, a single finger is nice, but two-finger is better because then it makes this position feel very natural, second nature to the child. And then all they do to put a pencil in their hand is add that thumb. And now they have that perfect tri-finger tripod pencil grip. It helps to prevent the claw of death that for a lot of kids, once they develop that, it's really hard to get out of that habit. The tracing tray can help the older kids. As long as you're observing and making sure that they're tracing in that position, it's going to help them more naturally just put that in their hand and not be grabbing it too hard, pressing too hard so that after they've written for all of 90 seconds, they are complaining and saying, my hand hurts, I hate writing, I can't write. This is just going to help to either prevent it or correct it. Plus, they love it. This is another one of those materials that when we're exhibiting at convention, we put out on the table. Kids of all ages are drawn to this. Again, it's amazing the things that people have created tracing in the tray, from simple geometric shapes to pretty involved artistic creations that I felt terrible shaking that and erasing. So once they are finished with learning their letter sounds and letter names and that proper letter formation, they can still use this tracing tray for practicing spelling words, practicing science and math formulas. So this is something that, again, across all ages, kids tend to really enjoy. Okay, so we've got proper pencil grip. They are navigating how to, control that pencil, what pressure they should be using to, get their lines to show up, not too heavy, not too light. let's talk, and all of these things too are developing muscle tone and fine motor control, but having Play-Doh, any version of that, if you are gluten-free, of course, you can swap out a gluten-free Play-Doh for that. But Play-Doh is actually used in occupational therapy, specifically for strengthening the muscle tone in the hands. That's going to also contribute to beautiful writing. So using this is another way that the child can reinforce that letter sound, that letter name, and the proper shape of that letter. To take a bowl of that Play-Doh, I happen to be also gluten sensitive, so I'm not going to demonstrate it with the actual Play-Doh. I can't touch it, but you'll just take a bowl of that and roll it and create a little Play-Doh snake. And with that rope, then create and form that letter while they are, if they're at that stage of practicing the letter sound, they can go ahead and make that sound while they're forming the letter. If they're to that stage of then doing the letter name, they can do that. As they get older and they're past that level, again, they can use it for practicing spelling words or really anything. Kids love working with Play-Doh. With all of the materials, once you've done your formal presentation and introduction, give the child a period of independent exploration with that, an independent play, if you will, so that they can find off-label uses for the materials or just keep going with what they have done. And then once it has been introduced and you have it out on that open shelving, especially if it's paired with a little tray, if you would like, if you have Schiller Learning Math Kit 1, and you have that wooden tray, you can actually purchase additional trays for your open shelving if you're going to, set your classroom up in a Montessori style. Okay, plastilina modeling clay. I have not worked with that one. So that is that modeling clay, is that grain-free by chance, do you know? Gluten as well as corn-free. I can't touch corn either. So I will definitely look into that. And there are also some DIY Play-Doh recipes. We are actually testing out a number of those so that we can share a fabulous DIY recipe for you to make with the kids. And then, the kids create it. And of course, whatever they make themselves, they're going to be more interested in using. But with those materials on that open shelving, then, if your child says, oh, I'd like to go do more tracing, don't feel like, oh, well, on my schedule, I had science next. Let them go ahead, pull that thing off that they are interested in, because, you'll be able to go to that thing that you had on either your physical or mental checklist after they're finished with that activity. And when the child is drawn to a material, they are going to absorb that like a sponge and really engage and be involved in that learning actively. So we do really recommend, whenever possible, to incorporate that interest-led learning to help you with that structure, where you have some flexibility within a structure. We do have a free student planner on our blog. One of the activities in there are the schedule cards. That really helps people. And that is one of those things, as Schiller Learning, the Rising Stars Foundation, we support homeschoolers. And so not only do we support the math and language arts and geography, grace and courtesy, the sensory, all of those aspects, but we support you just in homeschooling in general. And one of the things that I find, oh, I gotta be careful not to kick that there. I do have a new setup for recording. I'm hoping this is uh, going to give me some greater flexibility in the way we do sessions in the future. I just have to be careful not to kick it. But so one of the things that a lot of people are struggling with as homeschool parents is that scheduling and the structure, and how do we make sure that we're getting it all in, but not having it where, okay, we're doing this from uh 10 to 10:30, and we have to go to this next thing, so that the kids are more vested and it's not replicating school at home. So I recommend that student planner as well as our parent planner. And just last week, that came up in a couple of conversations again and really helped some people with their time management and incorporating that interest-led learning. Okay, so that is going to be it for today's session with introducing handwriting or helping to correct some less than desirable handwriting habits. You have got your insets, you have your tracing tray with the quinoa. Again, your movable alphabet lid functions as a perfect tracing tray. Put the quinoa just enough to cover the bottom. Simple shake erase. Kids are going to love that. And then even before they're able to write with letters, they can use that movable alphabet as they are learning to read with writing letters as well as then spelling them. So they can do all of those multisensory activities, the insets, the tracing, the Play-Doh, to develop that fine motor control, the muscle tone, that manual dexterity that they need for beautiful writing, while having a ball and not feeling like they are locked into sitting in a chair simply doing worksheets. Next week, we are going to talk about some of the geography resources. Oh, and by the way, you probably already have quinoa at home or Play-Doh. So that is something that you can easily add. Those insets, again, those are on sale with our President's Day sale. We do have geography resources, but it's also going to talk about things that you can do, again, with things that are already in the home. Yeah, so you can use either crayons or colored pencils with the insets. The colored pencils do have that advantage because it's going to help the child to learn to properly hold that pencil, as well as the pressure that they are giving the pencil as they're doing that tracing. They want just enough to have that easily seen line, not too light, not too heavy. And then because with the tracing, the kids are drawn to want to do that for an extended period of time. They're going to self-correct when they're holding that pencil too tight and pressing too hard and tiring their hand out. So it's because the desire to keep going with the activity is going to be a great way to self-correct. Of course, observing your child is always an important part of Montessori. So as your child is first using a material, observe how they're doing it, see if there are any questions that you can ask them to remind them of best practices or things to point out. Okay, super. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you found this session helpful. These materials really are a perfect fit for any homeschool program. Everything's available individually, but again, really only thing you probably don't already have at home is those uh, the metal insets, and you can get those at schillerlearning.com. Thanks, guys. I will see you next week.